Ted Smeaton, inspiring communities, we'll talk about that, plus the Central Coast Business College. We'll get through a bit this afternoon.
Great.
Let's talk about inspiring communities.
Okay, inspiring. Sorry.
No, it's just the strategies. If we could choose one or two strategies there that you'd like to recount to us.
One or two strategies. That's a big question.
But, I know.
Well, Inspiring Communities is an organisation that started, I guess, to do both community development and social policy. And when we started, we intentionally decided to make sure we're having a long dialogue with other people around the world. And from that, we've built quite a lot of very, very strong relationships.
Can I community development, what's it mean?
Okay, what we're talking about is how do we help communities to actually both be financially and socially strong. So our role is often to support either government or community non-government organisations to interact and support people that are particularly on the edge of community, but also to think about how does the whole community come together to support each other, and how do we actually also make economic and social development.
Okay, and you advise across that?
We advise right across that, and we come from a particular tradition, I guess, which is the strength-based tradition, which is about building on what's already there and working and connecting people themselves, citizens themselves, to make a difference.
And history with Benevolent Society?
Oh, right, yeah, I worked for the Benevolent Society for a period of time, and in fact started I was the regional director, or director for regional and rural programs of the Benevolent Society, and our first regional program, was the Central Coast.
Right.
And in a sense we thought that we would dabble here, for want of a better word, to see whether or not there were some programs that we should be running.
Right.
I was asked by the board to write a report, and it was supposed to take about 6 weeks time here. That was 10 years ago.
And have you finished the report?
Oh yeah, I finished the report.
Okay, but you just haven't finished here.
Just haven't finished here. And the result of that was the Benevolent Society started a small program on the Central Coast and is now one of the biggest providers on the coast of social services. And it was our first step into rural and regional New South Wales, and now it's one of the largest providers. So we went from me 2 days a week to an $18 million turnover in 2.5 years.
Okay. Now I want to go back to Inspire Communities.
Yeah.
That's doing work around the world now.
Absolutely, yeah. I guess about 5 years ago, I got connected with the University of Northwestern and with an institute there.
How did you do that?
Well, it's a bit of a long story, I guess.
Keep it short because we're on a time limit.
Well, Jody Kratzman, who's one of the professors there, came to Australia and was literally speaking at a conference in Newcastle. And I was speaking at a conference in Newcastle about a project I'd been involved with in Western Sydney. He was interested in that, and then when Newcastle University brought him out to Australia again in about 2005, I had a phone call from the Family Action Centre saying, hey, would you like to tour with Jody? And so we started that relationship. Then in about 2007, I was asked to be the first international faculty member of the Asset-Based Community Development Institute at Northwestern.
The only reason I'm asking that, Ted, is because sometimes we forget why a face-to-face meeting with someone who you think may work well with you should always be embraced.
Absolutely, and
now you're working with one of the leading universities in the US.
That's right. Yes, yep.
Cool. Okay.
And a couple of the leading sort of experts in this area.
Okay. Yep. Back to Inspire Communities now. The programs, or I guess strategies that do you have a strategic approach? Would you say?
We have a strategic approach we're very clear about what it is that we do and we don't do. We're very clear about who our partners are. And I guess we've been trying to build that approach. One of the things that we've done is purposely built very, very strong relationships with leading people around the world who I sometimes bring out to Australia. We recently had Jim Deers from the University of Washington here, who's one of the world's leaders in community renewal. We're connected with a number of the leading people in Great Britain. So it was a strategy to actually say, how do we partner, how do we work together? And there's a clear strategy that not only are we doing the work, but we're writing about the work, we're teaching about the work, we're moving that quite through.
So vertically integrated, to choose a phrase of the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me what you don't do then. What you get someone would come up and say, "Oh, Ted, we've got to work with you." What don't you do?
We wouldn't develop traditional services, so we wouldn't say if someone said we want a child protection service or those sorts of things. What we're trying to do is always cutting edge, and it's always citizen-driven, community-driven work.
Okay.
And it's a subtle difference, but quite
Oh
an important difference.
no, I think there is traditional stuff where expectations are incredibly clear and
Yes.
and numbers are there, which are the worst places in the world to work, I think so.
I think so. So we've always intentionally, as Inspiring Communities, tried to work on the edge. The other strategy, I guess, is that, I think I was saying before we went on air, that when I first started we started Inspiring Communities, our vision was broader than the Central Coast, and we were working around New South Wales and Australia and internationally. And then somebody said to me one day, hey, do you do any work on the Central Coast, or would you do any work on the Central Coast? It was nearly as if people thought that we'd moved off from that wasn't important anymore. But in fact, the Central Coast is a beautiful place, which has lots of assets and resources and lots of challenges as well. So we've had more of a focus, I guess, of intention of saying, hey, how do we help on the coast as well? How do we bring some of that leading edge ideas that we're using, some of those leading edge people, to the Central Coast? So 3 weeks ago, we did a big ideas forum at Regional Development Australia, where we had Jim, who's just recently been out working with me, to present some of the latest thinking that was particularly coming from big society in Great Britain. Yeah. And then we also started to think about, are there other areas of work? So we've literally, I guess, started a new business, which is the Central Coast Business College, because we've been connecting with some leading business thinkers as well. Because what's been interesting is the social and the business world have been emerging much, much more. I think people are realising that the world's not so linear anymore, and that the answers are quite different than what we thought they were before. So some of the work around learning organisations and learning communities. So the work of, say, Peter Singay at MIT, and him thinking about learning organisations, and Meg Weekly, who's thinking about them in the community. Our work, well, we're doing that too. So all starting to merge together. So
don't tell me the triple bottom line is
oh, it's a quadruple bottom line now.
Now it's okay. Let's talk a little bit about the Central Coast Business College. Where does that stitch into them?
It stitches into it that because we've made these very, very strong international connections, that we thought, wouldn't it be interesting to bring some of those people to Australia? Wouldn't it be interesting to start to expose business in particular and on the coast and more broadly to the latest thinking? We thought we'd look more traditional than we probably are now. Mm-hmm. We didn't expect to have QBE as one of our first large customers. So the 10th biggest insurance company in the world. We're training 76 of their managers now in leadership. So Central Coast Business College is taking quite a strong focus around leadership. And the other interesting area that we've been developing, and it's because we'd noticed a gap, I guess, there was a group of people coming around the notion of social enterprise, which is businesses that have a social and a market. So they have a business plan, but they're also about social good. The one that we launched, helped some young people launch yesterday, for example, was an ethical foods organisation. So it's a social enterprise where all the foods that it buys are either local or very, very ethical in the sense of either environmentally or socially. And what we've been running is a series of programs in that area. We've run a diploma that runs right across the coast. We've had key people from government and elsewhere over that 12 months. We've got 3 social enterprise certificates that we're running at the moment. We're bringing young people who I guess have been on the edge of the employment market, may have multiple barriers, into setting up their own small businesses, building through. And probably the best example at the moment is the work that we're currently doing in San Remo. So what I guess we've been doing is taking that training component and partnering with people like DEET, Regional Development Australia, to actually bring some of the latest thinking into both the social and the business world and bringing them together.
Okay. It's not a standard model.
No.
I got that. QBE is there. Why has QBE come to you?
The original conversation with QBE was actually about corporate responsibility. But as we started talking about that, I have a history also in, I used to teach management at the University of Technology and have a master's in that area, and had particularly been thinking about the role of the social and the business area. So I have a background there. And as we were talking about corporate responsibility, they then started talking about some of their leadership challenges and some of their case management style challenges that they're having in their workers' compensation area, and saw that there was a logical fit about the skills that we could bring, the people that we could bring together as well. For example, one of my colleagues, Paul Porteous, was Teacher of the Year at Harvard in 2003. Him and I worked together in the Australian Centre for Social Leadership a number of years ago, and to be able to bring someone of that sort of calibre into that program was really useful. So I guess it is that we are actually taking some of the latest thinking around management, leadership, both social and non-social, and bringing those together. So they were quite attracted by a leadership program that looked a little bit different but had a lot of substance.
Okay. We need to talk more about it, but we might encourage people to go to your website for the Central Coast Business College. So, but more on that later. You have a foolish life, I think. I said foolish. Do you balance that, or do you just go at 100 miles an hour the whole time?
I probably don't balance it as much as I could, but I'm also not sure that this work-life balance piece is quite as clear-cut as it first seems. My passion, I guess, is the work that I do.
Yes.
And so it's hard to split that, and sometimes I think I get my re-energising through actually writing, thinking, doing things that look quite like work. You know,
to everyone else.
So to everybody else, that's
relaxing,
right.
yeah.
But to everybody else. So there's a bit of a balance there, but I would say my family would sometimes think I need to slow down.
It keeps them fit chasing you anyway.
Yeah, thank goodness they're very supportive.
And this terrifies me because we're up to the rant stage now. What soapbox time? So tell me, Jeff, and you have 60 seconds. What gets up your nose? What do you look at?
What gets up my nose? Look, I think the challenge that we have here on the Central Coast is about actually stronger collaboration. Some of the things I see at the moment is that people are very competitive rather than trying to work and learn and build together. And I think we need to start to partner better. And I think there needs to be more sharing of technology and information.
Now I'm going to interrupt. Why doesn't that happen?
I think there's a number of complex reasons for that. I think some people misunderstand the notion of competition, misunderstand the process also of how you generate new ideas and how you take opportunities. And I think that there is also still a notion that people don't actually understand the notion of power. And that they think that power is actually finite, and that I'm somehow more powerful and more successful, and my business will be too, if I am able to keep all the intellectual property, use a particular set of language, dress in a particular way, whatever it might be. And so in a sense we don't want to give anybody an even break. Instead, that in fact if I share opportunities with you and I share knowledge and we work together, in fact we both have knowledge and we both have an opportunity to launch something further outside the region.
You're the most recent disciple of Seth Godin.
Okay.
So we're on the same page here.
Yeah. And I just don't think that also our management schools have taught that well enough. I think we've been all about risk management. Yeah. Now, risk management's important, but it's not the only thing.
Bob, behind the camera and the technical director would at this point say, you know, the worst person in the world right now is a Harvard MBA because they taught greed and avarice. Yep. And now, where you are, QBE is there saying, hey, we need some help here. Yeah,
look, I think that's right. I think that people saw themselves in silos, in competition, and was about greed, etc. as well. The other thing I think that the Harvard MBAs have done for us is that they always start with what's the worst thing that could possibly go wrong and let's mitigate the risk. I actually think we need to know what Camelot is. And then when you know what Camelot is, you need to put the drains in. So you still need to have risk management. But we seem to start from there. And I won't talk about QBE, but another corporate we've been doing some work with, every time we go into a meeting, all we get is this list of all the possible threats of things that could go wrong. And some of them are so obscure, it'd have to be, you know, the third blue moon of the year, you know, rather than saying, now, where's the opportunity? Now, I'm not saying that the glass, you know, isn't both half full and half empty, but we've got to start more thinking about the half full bit, taking the opportunities and starting to build on those, and taking, as organisations and individuals, control of that ourselves.
On the Central Coast, we've got Dr. Anton Chris, who is working with Enterprise Connect on this innovation space. What can we add there? You're familiar with it?
I am, yes, and I'm familiar with Anton, and in fact we're hoping to collaborate on a few things this year. So
okay. So what would you bring to that relationship, do you think? It's almost a job in-house because he does watch us. So what strands do you bring to that?
I think that firstly coming back to that whole notion of innovation, one of the things I think that we sometimes miss out about thinking about is that abrasion that occurs when two cultures connect with another. So when an engineer gets into a room with the social worker, say, there is actually a change of culture and connection there, and that's where we start to see that creative vibration occurring. And I think one of the things, our hallmark of Inspiring Communities, has been the ability to bring people from very different cultural backgrounds, very different social and political backgrounds into dialogue together. So that's one of the skills, I guess.
And I'd love to stop there because we just need some snapshots now. That's a really cool area, and we don't challenge ourselves enough. So we might move on to, I guess, generating clusters and breaking those silos down. It's something that this is what we're here for.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's actually a huge issue, not just in business, but right across the whole community. I mean, if you take a school, for example, we did some work a few years ago, and if you use the school just for its mission of educating children from 9 to 3:30 in the afternoon, it gets used 15% of the time. And I think we've got similar sorts of things happening with our businesses and our government departments right across. And there's resources that we don't actually share and put together, and there's also then technologies as well. The other thing is that I think that we can be much more ambitious in what we were able to do, not only about what we were able to learn about, but also about what we're able to partner and build. If we build really strong, trusting relationships with people, so that we can quite quickly, put in a tender for something or see an opportunity and build a new business option, rather than say, let's kick this audit over here.
Well, it goes back to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not only the physical presence. I mean, I think sometimes I've seen clusters come together, supposed clusters come together, and people are just really co-locating offices together. You need to have structures where people actually get to build, in our language, the social capital, get to actually have some trust and reciprocity occurring, and start to share intellectual property to both people's benefit.
Part of that is about risk taking.
Yep.
And the opportunity to look at that gap and say, I can jump that.
Yep.
Do you look at any moments in your life and say, I can jump that? And did you make it?
Well, I managed to be here, so...
So that's true. You made it more often than you didn't.
That's right. Made it more often than we didn't.
Yeah.
And I guess even just the idea of establishing Inspiring Communities to start with. I was a senior manager in a large not-for-profit organisation on quite a reasonable salary with a nice trajectory. But we wanted to be more innovative, wanted to do things that were different, wanted to challenge. So just the mere fact of stepping out the door and starting something totally new, and something that was very different than anybody else in Australia seemed to be doing. And again, also literally getting in an aeroplane, flying, following up relationships in different parts of the world. Again, it was a risk. You get an invitation and away you go to do those things. When we first decided to, we had an invitation to work in Africa or work in Papua New Guinea, work with Afghani communities. That sort of stuff was, there's something that you've got to think through. Do you want to do? And one, do you have something that you can offer that's useful? And so you're taking some risks there. But in the process of taking risks, I think in our work you don't want to do any harm to other people, and you also do need to open your eyes to say, what are some of the things that we need to mediate through this process?
Okay. Ted, we've got to stop there, but we want to talk some more. So thank you for your time. Thank you.